Heinrich Himmler was not building a military headquarters. He was constructing a cathedral for a dark religion, while the rest of the world saw the German Reich as a machine of industry and steel. Its most powerful leader was staring backward into the shadows of myth. He was looking for something the modern world had forgotten. In the heart of Westphalia, perched upon a triangular outcrop of stone, sits Wewelsburg Castle. To the casual observer, it is a relic of the Renaissance. To the men who wore the silver skull on their caps, it was the center of the universe. This was the spiritual battery for an empire intended to last 1,000 years. A stone vessel for rituals that defy conventional logic. The selection of Wewelsburg was no accident of geography. It was a calculated move by a man who believed he was the reincarnation of King Henry the Fowler, the 10th century founder of the medieval German state. Himmler was convinced that the castle sat at a point of immense telluric energy, a geometric focal point that could channel the power of the ancestors into the living world. He didn't just want to occupy the castle, he wanted to transform it. He envisioned a massive architectural complex that would eventually dwarf the surrounding village. A circular city shaped like a spearhead, aimed at the heart of the future. This was not a dream of strategy, but a dream of sorcery. A physical manifestation of a worldview rooted in the belief that the past could be summoned to dictate the present. The architecture of Wewelsburg is a silent witness to these ambitions. The most significant renovations were focused on the North Tower, a structure that was never intended for defense, but for transcendence. Inside this tower lie two rooms that defy conventional military logic. The first is the Obergruppenführersaal, or the General's Hall. It is a chamber of cold, imposing stone where 12 pillars ring the room, leading the eye upward to a ceiling of vaulted perfection. Beneath the feet of those who stood there lies the most famous and enigmatic symbol of the castle's hidden history, the Black Sun. Inlaid into the marble floor, there is a sun wheel with 12 jagged rays, a geometric puzzle that has sparked decades of debate. It was not a symbol meant for the public eye. It was a secret sigil, a map for the initiated, suggesting that the power of the sun could be inverted, turned inward to illuminate the dark recesses of the soul. Every inch of the North Tower was designed to strip away the distractions of the material world. The 12 pillars in the hall do more than support the weight of the stone. They represent a council of elites, a new order of knights who were meant to stand as the pillars of a new reality. The light that enters the room is filtered, casting long, sharp shadows that dance across the dark green marble of the floor. When the sun hits the center of the room, the Black Sun mosaic seems to pulse with a hidden life. It is a design that draws the observer inward, toward a center that remains empty and silent. It is a geometry of isolation, a space built for men who believed they were standing at the very edge of the human experience, looking into a void they hoped to control. Below the General's Hall is a place even more shadowed, the crypt. Known as the Walhalla, this circular room was designed with acoustic properties that allow a whisper at one end to be heard clearly at the other, yet the atmosphere is one of stifling, heavy silence. In the center of the floor is a circular indentation, a place where an eternal flame was meant to burn. Around the walls are 12 stone plinths. This was where the ashes of the highest-ranking members of the inner circle were to be placed, ensuring that even in death, they remained part of the castle's spiritual foundation. The design suggests a belief in a form of continuity that transcends the biological, a way to anchor the spirits of the elite to the physical stones of their sanctuary. It was a tomb, but it was also a womb, intended to facilitate a cycle of rebirth for a new breed of man. The acoustics of the crypt are particularly unsettling. A man standing in the center of the circle, where the flame would have flickered, finds his voice amplified in a way that feels unnatural. It is as if the room itself is echoing not just his words, but his thoughts. The 12 plinths around the perimeter wait like silent sentinels, carved from the same cold stone that forms the foundation of the tower. This was meant to be the holiest site of the order, a place where the barrier between the living and the dead was considered to be thin. The air here feels thick, charged with the weight of an intent that was never fully realized. It is a room built for a future that was cut short, leaving behind a hollow space that still feels as though it is waiting for something to return. The rituals that took place within these walls remain largely a matter of speculation, as the records were systematically purged as the tide of war began to turn. However, the architecture itself provides the clues. The obsession with the number 12, the 12 pillars, the 12 rays of the sun, the 12 seats around the table, echoes the Arthurian legend of the Round Table. Himmler saw himself as the head of a new order of knights, men who were bound not just by an oath of service, but by a shared metaphysical destiny. They gathered in Wewelsburg not to discuss supply lines or troop movements, but to engage in meditation, to study the runes, and to immerse themselves in a distorted version of Germanic mysticism. It was a cult of the blood, a belief that through certain rituals, the purity of a mythological past could be reclaimed and forged into a weapon for the present. Visitors to the castle today often speak of a peculiar atmosphere in the North Tower. It is a sense of being watched by the architecture itself. The stones were carved with an intent that goes beyond aesthetics. Every angle, every vaulted arch was designed to reinforce a sense of hierarchy and cosmic order. This was the Camelot of a regime that saw itself as the rightful heir to the gods of old. The scale of the project was staggering. Thousands of laborers were brought in to reshape the landscape, moving earth and stone to satisfy a vision that grew more erratic as the geopolitical situation grew more desperate. The castle was to be the nucleus of a vast city-state, a place where the elite would live in a world separated from the mundane realities of the masses. The surrounding forest of Westphalia adds to the castle's isolation. Even now, the trees seem to lean toward the stone walls, as if trying to reclaim the land that was so violently reshaped. During the years of its transformation, the castle was a hive of activity, but it was an activity shrouded in secrecy. The local villagers knew little of what happened behind the gates, only that the men who entered were different from those who left. There was a gravity to the place, a sense that the very laws of nature were being examined and challenged within the North Tower. It was a fortress of the mind as much as it was a fortress of stone, a place where the boundaries of what was considered possible were being pushed into the realm of the occult. There is a persistent theory that the castle was more than just a meeting place. It was a laboratory for the Ahnenerbe, the department dedicated to researching the ancestral heritage of the Reich. This group traveled the globe, from the peaks of Tibet to the deserts of North Africa, searching for artifacts and lost knowledge that could provide a technological or spiritual edge. Wewelsburg was the vault for these findings. It is said that the castle's library contained thousands of volumes on the occult, astrology, and ancient history, all curated to support the narrative of a predestined rise to power. The leaders believed that by decoding the secrets of the ancients, they could master the forces of nature itself. It was a blend of fringe science and high superstition, a dangerous cocktail that fueled a sense of invincibility. Imagine the high-ranking officers gathering in the library, surrounded by texts that claimed to unlock the mysteries of the stars and the secrets of the earth. They were looking for a shortcut to destiny, a way to bypass the limitations of human existence. The Ahnenerbe's researchers brought back maps of the stars that didn't match the modern sky and stories of lost civilizations that possessed powers beyond modern comprehension. In the quiet of Wewelsburg, these fragments of history and myth were woven into a tapestry of absolute authority. The castle was the place where these theories were tested, where the leadership sought to ground their political power in something they believed was ancient and eternal. As the conflict outside the castle walls intensified, the focus inside Wewelsburg shifted. The rituals became more frequent and the obsession with the center of the world more pronounced. There are stories of rings being crafted for the elite, silver bands engraved with runes that were supposedly consecrated in the crypt of the North Tower. These rings were not merely jewelry, they were considered links in a chain, connecting the wearer to the collective will of the order. When a member died, his ring was returned to Wewelsburg to be stored in the crypt, a symbolic homecoming that reinforced the idea that no one ever truly left the service of the state. The castle became a giant reliquary, a storehouse for the souls of the fallen. The rings were more than symbols, they were intended to be anchors. Those who wore them believed they carried the weight of the castle with them, no matter how far they traveled from Westphalia. The return of the rings to the crypt was a ritual of closure, a way to ensure that the power of the individual was always funneled back into the stone foundation of the tower. This cycle of life, death, and return was central to the ideology of Wewelsburg. It created a closed loop, a system where the outside world ceased to matter, and only the internal logic of the order remained. The castle was the heart of this system, pulsing with a dark energy that demanded absolute loyalty and total sacrifice. The dark allure of Wewelsburg lies in its contradiction. It is a place of immense beauty and horrific intent. The precision of the stonework, the elegance of the vaulted ceilings, and the peacefulness of the surrounding forest stand in stark contrast to the ideology that birthed them. It is a physical manifestation of what happens when a modern state abandons reason in favor of myth. The men who walked these halls believed they were the architects of a new reality, one where the laws of morality were replaced by the laws of spiritual superiority. They looked into the abyss of the past and thought they saw a reflection of their own greatness, failing to realize that the abyss has a way of swallowing those who stare too long. In the final days of the Reich, as the Allied forces closed in, Himmler gave the order to destroy the castle. He could not bear the thought of his Camelot falling into the hands of those he deemed unworthy. Explosives were set, and the North Tower was gutted by fire. Yet the stones refused to crumble completely. The thick walls of the crypt and the General's Hall survived the flames, leaving the symbols of the Black Sun and the 12 pillars intact. It was as if the castle itself was resisting its own erasure, standing as a scorched monument to a vision that had failed. The attempts to wipe away the history of Wewelsburg only succeeded in deepening its mystery. When the first soldiers arrived at the ruins, they found a place that defied explanation. They saw the strange mosaics, the echoing crypts, and the bizarre geometric layouts. It didn't look like a military installation. It looked like the lair of a secret society, a place where the bizarre had become the norm. The artifacts that hadn't been destroyed or looted were scattered, leaving a trail of questions that would haunt historians for decades. What were they searching for in the silence of that crypt? What did they hope to see in the center of the Black Sun? The answers are buried in the layers of ash and the scarred stone of the tower. The mystery of Wewelsburg is not just in what happened there, but in the mindset of the people who created it. It represents a total rejection of the Enlightenment, a turn toward the irrational and the primordial. To understand Wewelsburg is to understand the darkest impulses of the human psyche, the desire for total control and the need for a spiritual justification for worldly power. The castle was the laboratory where these ideas were distilled into stone and ritual. It was a place where the mundane was discarded in favor of the monumental, and where the individual was sacrificed to a collective myth. Today, the castle stands as a museum, but the occult aura of the North Tower persists. It is a site where the lines between fact and folklore become blurred. The Black Sun mosaic has become a symbol for various subcultures, detached from its original context but still carrying the weight of its creator's intent. It serves as a reminder that symbols are powerful tools capable of inspiring both great beauty and absolute darkness. The castle is no longer a temple, but it remains a warning, a stone testament to the dangers of a world where myth is treated as mandate. There are those who claim that the rituals at Wewelsburg were not entirely unsuccessful, suggesting that the energy of the place has left a permanent stain on the land. They point to the strange occurrences reported by visitors, the cold spots in the crypt, and the feeling of unease that permeates the North Tower. While these accounts are subjective, they speak to the enduring power of the castle's design. It was built to affect the human spirit, to instill a sense of awe and dread, and in that regard, the architects succeeded. The castle doesn't need supernatural forces to be haunting. Its history and its intent are more than enough to chill the blood of anyone who understands what the stones were meant to represent. As we look back at the shadow of Wewelsburg, we are forced to confront the fact that this wasn't a medieval nightmare, but a modern one. It happened in a world of radios, airplanes, and advanced medicine. It is a reminder that the irrational is never truly gone. It is merely waiting for a moment of crisis to re-emerge, offering simple, powerful myths to a world that has lost its way. Wewelsburg was the heart of an empire that tried to turn back the clock, to return to a time of kings and sorcery, and in doing so, it created a vacuum that swallowed everything in its path. The triangular castle on the hill remains a silent observer of the passing years. The forests of Westphalia have grown back, covering the scars of the era. The village below has moved on, though the shadow of the North Tower still falls across the valley in the late afternoon. The black sun still sits in the floor of the General's Hall, its 12 rays pointing toward a future that never arrived. It is a map to nowhere, a symbol of a journey into the dark that ended in ruin. But as long as the stones stand, the questions will remain. What were they trying to summon? And are we sure that it ever truly left? The legacy of Wewelsburg is a puzzle with missing pieces. We have the architecture, we have the symbols, and we have the fragments of the ideology. But the true heart of the place, the actual experiences of the men who sat in those 12 chairs, is lost to time. Perhaps that is for the best. Some secrets are better left in the shadows, buried beneath the vaulted ceilings and the cold marble floors. The castle serves as a dark mirror, reflecting the worst possibilities of the human imagination. It is a place where the dream of a new world turned into a nightmare of stone and ash, leaving behind only the echoes of a silent, terrifying prayer. In the end, Wewelsburg is a story about the power of belief. The men who built it believed they were touching something beyond the material world, that they were tapping into the very fabric of the universe. They were wrong, but their belief was strong enough to reshape the world for a brief, horrific moment. The ruins of their ambition serve as a permanent caution. They remind us that the most dangerous monsters are not those that hide in the woods, but those that build cathedrals to their own delusions. The North Tower still stands, a jagged silhouette against the sky, a reminder that the occult heart of the empire may have stopped beating, but its stone ribcage remains, waiting for the next seeker to wander into its depths. The silence of the crypt is the final word on Wewelsburg. It is a silence that swallows questions and offers no comfort. Whether it was a site of genuine occult practice or merely the stage for a grand theatrical delusion, the result was the same. It was a place where the human soul was traded for a fantasy of power. As the wind whistles through the arrow slits and the sun sets behind the triangular walls, the castle remains a riddle wrapped in stone, a dark thriller that has no ending, only a series of cold, haunting chapters that we are still trying to understand. The black sun remains fixed in the floor, an unblinking eye staring up from the depths of history, watching as the world continues to turn, oblivious to the darkness that once sought to swallow the sun.